All right, welcome. This is Chapter 3. I'm going to be going over a few brief concepts from that chapter. Many people don't even realize that the study of sensation and perception is part of psychology, but in fact it's an important part. And in this chapter we're going to be looking at the 5 senses: vision, hearing, taste, touch, smell. And I'm really only today going to be covering 4 of those senses, but in your book it covers all 5. Anyway, vision is the one I'm going to cover first. And vision is oftentimes the most researched study because human beings are very visual, and and a lot of our survival, getting around the world depends upon our vision. And so there's a lot of study devoted to vision. In your book, there's a beautiful picture of an eye, and it's diagrammed by its parts there. So you should look at that and learn the different parts of the eye. In the eye, first you encounter the cornea. That's the clear part on the outside. And right behind that, there's liquid. And this thick, viscous liquid, if it builds up too much, can actually cause glaucoma, which is a leading cause of blindness in adults who are middle-aged or beyond, and especially for some reason in African Americans. It's very easy to treat, though, and so people who have eye tests may be tested for glaucoma. All right, as you go on then, behind that liquid, you see the color part of your eye. That's called the iris, and it's genetic, whether your eyes are blue or brown or whatever. And the iris can open up this hole in the middle to allow in more light, or if it's very bright outside, the iris will close down to not allow so much light into the eye. And so the hole in the middle is simply a hole, and that hole is called a pupil. Behind there, then, we run into the lens, which is about the size and shape of an aspirin, and it's supposed to be nice and clear. If it does become clouded, though, and the light can't get through it, that's called cataracts. And today, many people, especially older individuals, may have cataract surgery to have this lens removed and replaced with an artificial lens that's nice and clear so that the light can get through to the back part of the eye. On the back part of the eye, literally glued on the back part of the eye, is the retina. And the retina is this sheet that houses what's known as the photoreceptor cells. And in the eye, these photoreceptor cells are rods and cones. On the periphery, on the outside, is rods, and we have like 120 million of those. Those control light and dark adaptation. When you come into a darkened theater and you can't see a thing, but pretty soon you can see around pretty well. That's because of the rods. In the middle, the cones have to do with 2 things. They have to do with visual acuity, that's being able to see things really clearly, and they also have to do with color vision. Human beings typically are considered or should have 20/20 vision. That means when you're standing 20 feet away from an eye chart, you can see that eye chart as well as a person with good vision could see it standing 20 feet away. And 2200 means when you're standing 20 feet away, even with your best glasses on, you can't read that eye chart any better than a person with good vision could read that eye chart standing 200 feet away. So that's considered legally blind. Newborn babies' vision is like 2600. Does that mean they're blind? At 20 feet away they are, but in fact if you get right up in their face, a foot away or so, they can see pretty well and really like looking at especially human faces. Their vision rapidly improves, and by 6 months old they can see as well as an adult. All right, then let me mention color vision. There's 2 main theories on color vision. One theory happens at the level of the cones. Helmholtz said that we have 3 kinds of cone receptors in our eyes, ones that respond to red, ones that respond to blue, and ones that respond to green light waves. And by the way, the 3 primary colors of light waves are red, blue, and green. Surprisingly green. Anyway, these cones in the eyes respond to those 3 primary colors of light waves and mix them together in such a way that we end up being able to see all of the colors of the rainbow. Also then, farther up along the visual pathway in the brain, there's another theory of color vision called Hering's opponent process theory. And that theory says that up in the brain, we have 3 kinds of opposing pairs: black and white, red and green, and blue and yellow. And we can tell that these 3 kinds of opposing pairs operate in that fashion because of something called after images. If you stare at a red piece of paper and then pull it away and look behind at a white piece of paper, you'll see a green glow. If you stare at blue, you'll see yellow. If you stare at yellow, you'll see blue. It's really black, you'll see white. And so after images tell us that those systems work in that way. Also, color blindness tells us that way. One of the most common kinds of color blindness is red-green color blindness, where people, especially males, are having trouble with seeing reds and greens the same way that other people see reds and greens. Okay, the last thing I want to mention about vision then is depth perception, and everyone, all animals, even human babies, seem to see depth perception. And Gibson and Walk's experiment where they had babies crawl over looked like a cliff. It was really covered with glass on the other side where the step dropped off. Babies were really hesitant to crawl over that edge, showing us that little babies, even 2 months old, if you lay them down face down, they could see the drop off. So it seems that we're pre-wired to see depth. All animals are. And then in your book, you should also look at the difference between monocular and binocular cues. Monocular cues only need one eye to see those. Binocular cues have to do with using your 2 eyes together, and that's particularly important for doing close, fine detail work. All right, I'm going to move away from vision then to hearing, and I'm going to cover these next systems much quicker. Hearing, there's a nice picture of the ear as well in your book, and it talks about the parts of the ear. If you're coming in through the pinna, the outer part of the ear, down the ear canal to the eardrum called the tympanic membrane, like a timpani, then you go into the middle part of the ear. And the middle part of the ear is full of air, because when we breathe in and out, air goes up in that middle ear. And that's where those 3 little bones are, the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. Incus malleus stapes, I guess I should say those in a different order, but those 3 little bones. And then we move into the inner ear where there's that cochlea, which looks like a snail, and that's full of liquid. And in the inner ear, there's a very important membrane passing right down the center of that houses the auditory receptor cells. That very important membrane is called the basilar membrane. And the basilar membrane has on it the auditory receptor cells, which are hair cells. And when the eardrum vibrates and vibrates these little bones, it vibrates the cochlea, and that causes inside the cochlea the hair cells on this basilar membrane to sway back and forth like seaweed. And they are connected to nerves. They go up to the brain and tell our brain what to hear. There's 2 main theories on hearing. You should look those over in your book. One is the place theory, the other is the volley theory. Place theory has to do with the place on the basilar membrane where the hair cells are wiggling the most, and that particularly has to do with higher sounds. Lower sounds, those 4,000 or 5,000 hertz or less, have primarily to do with the volley theory. So you can look that up too when you get the chance. Human beings can hear on up to about 20,000 hertz. Other animals, like bats, moths, even dogs, can hear higher pitches than us. Okay, the last 2 senses I'll mention just very briefly. The tongue. Our sense of taste is well developed at birth, and we have 4 main tastes that we're able to pick up. And these are on our tongue, on taste buds. And these taste buds are located in different places on our tongue. We do have a few on our throat, 2 in the roof of our mouth, but they're primarily on our tongue. Other animals have taste buds in other places, like some fish have taste buds on their sides so they can taste what they swim through. Some bugs have taste buds on their feet so they can taste what they walk over. I'm so glad we don't have that. But our 4 main tastes are sweet, right at the tip of our tongue. There's some sweet taste buds other places too, but mainly they're concentrated there. And human beings prefer sweet flavors right at birth even. We like sweet flavors. Along the sides is sour and salty, and in the back, predominantly it picks up bitter flavors. Right down the center of your tongue, though, is a blind spot where there aren't any taste buds at all. All right, then finally I'll mention the nose, an interesting sense, and there's a picture in your book of the nose. We breathe in air, gaseous molecules that go up into the olfactory bulb where there is this sheet called the olfactory epithelium. And the nose is a very interesting and unusual thing because the nose is the only spot in the human body where actual neurons, actual nerve cells, real brain-type neurons come in contact with the outside world. Sticking through the epithelium there are actual neurons. So when you breathe up, those molecules from the air with different scents in it touch these neurons, and that message goes shooting straight to the brain. It's the shortest path to the brain of all the senses. And for human beings, we have about 10 million nose neurons, whereas dogs have like 200 million nose neurons. These nose neurons die off and replenish themselves every 3 to 5 weeks or so, which is also another kind of strange thing, that all of them die off and we get all new ones. We have an amazing sense of smell as human beings, and looking at all kinds of smell experiments are really fascinating. You can smell a single drop of perfume in a small house. It's amazing how well our nose can really smell. Okay, that's all for today for this chapter. Look at your other words in your study guide for further help.